first mission after one stranger. In regards to the matter on this occasion, your lack of involvement has been proven. Hence, your house arrest has been lifted, though I'd considered it an unnecessary measure to begin with. Indeed, told so by the commander of the knights who wore a stern expression, Heinkel Astrea narrowed his eyes. Heinkel, proof of innocence, huh? At this stage. Stranger. Heinkel. That wasn't referring to this case alone. I don't need to spell it out for you, right, Commander? Twitching his eyebrows alongside his paltry smile and words, Heinkel shrugged his shoulders. Upon hearing the emphasis on his title, the other party's eyebrows formed an even deeper frown. A dark delight for Heinkel. That was because, at the very least, the person who carried that title obviously had some dissatisfaction with it. The commander of the knights, the bolder, Marcos Gildark, bearing rock-like facial features with rough edges that suited his alias, trained a silent gaze on Heinkel. There were intricate hues housed within that gaze, however. Unlike before, Heinkel was unfazed. It was strange. Before, he used to be absolutely terrified of Marcos's every action, but now he could not care less. It was neither that their rift in strength had been crossed, nor was it that their positions had been reversed. It was simply that the priorities within Heinkel had shifted from what they had been before. That was all it was. Heinkel, was that all? If so, that wasn't anything worth calling me all the way out to the guard station for. You should have just fetched some messenger. Commander of the Knights is a position important enough to get to do that sort of thing. Marcos, you're sure well informed. Was a relative of yours perhaps Commander of the Knights? Heinkel, hick, yeah, right, that's it. Even if you're acting all polite now, you'll always be the same at heart. Receiving the scathingly sarcastic riposte, Heinkel clicked his tongue and feigned composure. He had already thought to himself just a moment ago that he would no longer be perturbed by Marcos's words. That was why, Heinkel. If there's nothing else, let me go home. Oh yeah, I've yet to congratulate you on your promotion. Marcos, there is also the matter of you being appointed as the deputy commander of the Royal Guard. Heinkel. Huh! His attempt to use an unpleasant congratulatory address as an excuse to leave was shattered by an unthinkable proposition. Blinking several times, Heinkel gave a long, hard stare at Marcos's face on the other side of the desk. From his stern expression, he could not discern any precise colorings of emotion. Only it was obvious that even he who had spoken it was not welcome to the idea. Heinkel, what's your goal here? Me as deputy commander? As the commander of the Knights, that isn't a joke you should be making. Marcos, a joke would have been much more preferable. Of all the things for a man who, until just a moment ago, had been placed under house arrest on suspicion of being involved with the trafficking of illegal drugs, the second most important position of the guard. Heinkel, what are you speaking about as if you weren't involved? Marcos, it was decided by the Council of Wise Men. Although I am commander, the power of appointment isn't something I can dispute. Heinkel, the Council of Wise Men, the institution responsible for important decision-making within the kingdom, supporting the Lugunican royal family, and aiding the king to determine the nation's policies. Under that pretext, the Council of Wise Men was a gathering of the nation's mainstays who essentially ran the kingdom. Hearing that his own name had been raised by them, Heinkel frowned in bewilderment. Then, he immediately understood who the Council of Wise Men was truly focusing their attention on. Heinkel, they're scared of my son, so their motives to butter me up. Marcos, I won't deny it. After all, no matter what pretenses they maintain, that would still be the truth. Reinhard will also turn 15 next year. He'll be joining the guard. Isn't that right? Heinkel, ask him yourself. Hello, aren't you the current generation Sword Saint Sama who's inherited the divine protection of the Sword Saint? Do you plan on becoming a knight? Or whatever the fuck? Marcos, I have asked. And this is what he told me. That is for my father to decide, or something like that. Heinkel, relying on the thick emotions surging up, Heinkel had begun to speak in a vulgar manner as his expression distorted. The plot of the Council of Wise Men, Marcos's actions taken beforehand due to finding that plot disagreeable, as well as Reinhard's answer in response to him. Absolutely all of it rubbed Heinkel's soul the wrong way. Only, letting the erupting hatred rise to the corners of his mouth, Heinkel spoke. Heinkel, who the hell would want to become the deputy commander? That lot of senile old fools in the Council of Wise Men can go eat shit. 2. After parting with Marcos at the guard station, he did not intend on returning home directly to the mansion. He violently stripped away his night uniform and took on an appearance with which he could mix amidst the commoners, heading for a bar in the commoner district of the royal capital so that he could drown himself in as much cheap liquor as he desired. There was a bar in the royal capital known as the Silver Shield where knights typically frequented, but Heinkel absolutely would not set foot there. He did not wish to come face to face with the shopkeeper there. Not to mention, if he were to hear even a single rumor regarding his father, whose whereabouts were currently unknown, he foresaw that both his head and stomach would be ravaged for several days. Thus, bearing a pain that had not numbed no matter how much alcohol he drank, Heinkel was on his way home with flushed cheeks and staggering steps, stranger. Father! As his head swayed side to side, the moment his body was about to tip over after parting from the wall he had been leaning on, an outstretched hand caught him, and Heinkel immediately locked eyes with a nearby blue glow. Seeing that double due to his state of intoxication, Heinkel instantly realized that they were the eyes of a face he knew. Upon understanding that, he violently attempted to shake free from the arms supporting him, yelling, "Let go of me." He could not shake them off. Even though the strength gripping his arms was not very intense, his attempt to shake free was easily swept away and evaded. Heinkel, I said, let go of me. Stranger, I cannot do that. If I were to let go, you would end up tumbling down. Chiding the rambunctious Heinkel was a yet youthful boy, the 14-year-old Reinhard van Astria. As his true-born son lectured him so, Heinkel still continued to resist. But the scuffle between father and son on a rather empty street ended in Heinkel's crushing defeat before it could even be any sort of actual contest. Then, being lent a shoulder by his son before he could register it, they resumed walking home. Reinhard, please moderate your alcohol consumption. Today you were called in by Marco's son, correct? Heinkel, I've got no reason to be lectured by you. Besides, you're... Reinhard, what is it? Heinkel, no, nothing. That's right, Marcos called me in. My house arrest has been lifted. Reinhard, is that so? Even if it is only natural, it relieves me to hear that. Father has nothing so shady going on, so it was a valid decision. Heinkel, a valid decision, eh? Being dragged along as they walked, Heinkel peered at the side profile of Reinhard beside him. The composed face of his son. When he was young, it seemed to be composed only of the facial features of his wife, Luana, but now at 14, he could more or less spot features that aligned with his own face. While thinking that absolutely all of that was unnecessary, Heinkel, Marcos, he asked me to be deputy commander. Reinhard, is that true? As Heinkel grumbled that out, Reinhard's eyes gleamed, and his voice grew slightly lively. Likely, Reinhard himself had concealed that liveliness from his voice. However, Heinkel could tell. He could tell that this had truly delighted Reinhard. This vain promotion of his father had. Simultaneous to perceiving that, he also thought the following. Heinkel, Reinhard, when I was under house arrest, what did you do? Reinhard, Heinkel, answer me. What did you do while I was under house arrest? Don't tell me, with someone from the Council of Wise Men. Reinhard, you are mistaken. Father, during your house arrest, I did not make contact with any members from the Council of Wise Men. Of course, I did with Marco's son. Their evaluation of you, Father, is completely disconnected from me. Heinkel, there's no fucking way that's true. Stringing together shallow words, Reinhard attempted to keep up appearances, and Heinkel grabbed him by the collar. Then, slamming his son against the wall of the street, Heinkel peered into his eyes up close. Reinhard had said something that he ought to have never said. That Heinkel's special treatment had nothing to do with Reinhard. Heinkel, you shouldn't be saying things that you don't even believe in. For my wretched self to be something like deputy commander, Reinhard. But, Father, you ought to necessitate time, is that not correct? Heinkel, Reinhard. Time and status, it is best to have as much of those as possible. I know that you find it irritating, Father. For that reason, please accept this appointment. If you do so, Heinkel, Reinhard. If you do so, leaving the following words unclear, Reinhard frowned his well-shaped eyebrows, unable to continue. That was Reinhard's own way of expressing sadness. and it was clear that the genesis for those emotions had been the act of witnessing Heinkel's expression before his eyes. Likely, if he were to look into Reinhard's eyes, he would glimpse at the pathetic man who had caused his son to feel that way. But Heinkel did not look. Only, beaten down by Reinhard's reasoning, he acutely felt his own wretchedness. Heinkel, I guess it's exactly as you say. He desired time. The higher his position, the greater his title, the more help it would be. Things that the title of head of House Astria, the lineage of sword saints, was not enough for if he gained an important position within the guard, if he could gain more time to spend negotiating, then those very things might come within his reach. The means by which to awaken the slumbering Luana Astria might finally come into his hands this time. Heinkel, I was being extremely stubborn. When things need to get serious, there's absolutely zero value in any of my meager feelings of pride. Reinhard, Father, I am, Heinkel Istriadono. Releasing his collar, Heinkel thrust his finger at Reinhard's face. Heinkel, I'll become the deputy commander of the guard. Reinhard, you'll also enter the guard when you turn 15. Go brandish the power of the strongest sword saint in history to your heart's content. It'll make it easier for me to operate, perform the work of the guard, pull both your weight and my own. Reinhard, understood. Father Deputy Commander, if that is what you wish. Picking up on Heinkel's intentions, Reinhard silently accepted them. At the answer lacking any hesitation whatsoever, Marcos's words flashed through Heinkel's mind. Whether Reinhard became a knight or not depended entirely on Heinkel. Heinkel, become the #1 knight, a knight amongst knights. To the point that they stop worrying about me as an individual, become the sort of knight that everyone in this nation is utterly dependent on. Reinhard, Deputy Commander, if that is what you desire. Heinkel, that's right, that's what I want. It's what I desire, so go make it happen. At some point, Reinhard's expression had forgotten its sorrow and had returned to being a calm one. Unable to bear the sight of that, and finding it harsh to remain here, Heinkel turned his back on Reinhard. In the opposite direction of the mansion, he would return to the guard station of the knights he had departed from earlier and inform Marcos. Heinkel, I'll go tell him that I gratefully accept the appointment. Don't follow me. Reinhard, yes. As Heinkel began to walk, Reinhard, who had been about to accompany him for a moment, halted his step. As his son's presence faded into the distance, though still feeling the gaze clinging to his back, he walked and walked. His head hurt, but unrelated to the alcohol he had consumed, that was a terribly self-deprecating drunkenness of sorts. With tottering steps, he returned to the guard station at a rather late hour. It was likely a real nuisance, but he cared not. Heinkel, after all, you're also the type who presumes upon your wife's kindness and doesn't go home, right, Marcos? As if spitting those words out, he foolishly wounded himself again with his own words. In order to accept the promotion to deputy commander, which he was not suited to in the slightest, Heinkel Astria totteringly tread up the road to the royal castle, still having yet to carry the sword name of Van in his name. 3 until the very moment that the back, advancing down the street with unsteady steps, fully faded from his vision, the boy was tormented by an inner turmoil of whether or not to pursue it. If the boy felt like it would be no difficulty for him to follow behind without the other person detecting his presence. Only, considering the final comment, "Don't follow me," that was added, served to fetter the boy. Stranger, you don't need to worry. If it's your old man, our people are keeping an eye on him. And as the boy stood still on the street in hesitation, footsteps and a voice belonging not to the boy interrupted him. Having slipped out from the darkness was a lanky young man wearing a flimsy cap, Reinhard. Belmont-san. Belmont. And as for yourself, would Adelheid suffice? I always found it strange, but a girl really can transform herself into a different person. No, were you never a girl to begin with? Reinhard. It was thanks to the divine protection of makeup. Though I am the one who failed to realize that you were from the 6 tongues, Belmont-san, so it came as quite the surprise. Belmont. Ha ha ha, thanks. But even if you didn't think I was with the 6 tongues, you must have realized that I had been hiding something, right? Reinhard. As Belmont closed a single eye, the boy did not answer his question. Belmont seemed not to pay that any particular heed, and exhaled a "Well then, Belmont." I made sure not to listen in on the exchange, but how did your conversation go? Were you able to persuade your old man to accept the appointment of deputy commander? Reinhard. Yes, father told me that he would accept it. Belmont. I see, that's good then. We also had to pull a bunch of strings. The best thing is that it all didn't go to waste. Scratching his head with his bandaged hand, Belmont gave a broad smile. There had been no falsehoods in the words the boy had exchanged with his father a moment prior. In reality, the boy had not made contact with the council of wise men that controlled this nation's politics for this matter. That was because he had entrusted that task to another party. Belmont. Originally, it was a suspicion that collapsed because it took so long for us to uncover their informant. If this can at least serve as some compensation for you, that's what the boss thinks at least. Reinhard. I understand those feelings. In addition, Belmont. In addition, Reinhard. I have received permission from father to become a knight once I turn 15. Belmont. That's certainly good news. Our boss shall be pleased. Clapping his hands at the boy's news, Belmont recalled his injury with an ow as he stuck out his tongue. But the matter of the boy having received permission to become a knight was a feat that warranted an impact to that extent. For the boy, who had inherited the divine protection of the Sword Saint, was already showing prospects of surpassing all the Sword Saints of history, and was adorned with the sword name of Van. To vow to be the sword that protected the kingdom, that was. Belmont. Undoubtedly, that is the long-cherished desire of we at the Six Tongues. Reinhard. I will never swing the sword for the sake of you people. Belmont. Of course, by all means. Rather, it would be troubling if that wasn't the case. For your power to be used only for the sake of a single individual, that sort of situation would be a much greater loss. Reinhard. Belmont. More or less, becoming a knight will broaden your scope. Our boss would never let that go to waste. I truly believe that. There was a complete trust, unique to the likes of faith or devotion, to which the boy slightly frowned. He would have been able to understand the meaning of a slight change in facial expression were it the father. However, Belmont could not get a read on the boy. Ultimately, as that slight change faded like mist, Reinhard. You really believe in that person, don't you? Belmont. Well, isn't that the same as your feelings towards your old man? Reinhard. Perhaps that is so. Belmont also detected the slight hesitation in that answer, but unlike the change in facial expression he could not understand, this Belmont ignored whilst understanding it. Ultimately, the emotions of this red-haired boy were irrelevant to the Six Tongues' ideals. That perception was undoubtedly the stance of defending the country that Belmont had succeeded from his boss. Thus, the promise on this night, to become a knight amongst knights, and the future that would arise as a consequence of that, would be steadily drawn closer by the boy's own strength and fulfilled. But the parasite, Heinkel Istria, who had become deputy commander of the royal guard, even now, had yet to awaken his wife. He had yet to awaken her, and,